Hi everyone, I just wanted to bring you your quiz summary for this week. I'm legitimately on attempt number 5 to record this, so hopefully this one works. I'm trying something a little bit different, so you didn't have to look at my face in the middle of the screen. So that's why you see the text in the screen and me down in the corner. Hopefully it's a little less painful for you than having to stare at my face for 10 minutes or so. So first question I want to talk about was what is Stark Law, also known as the Social Security Act? I actually gave everyone credit for this question. I don't like the question generally. Stark Law is not also known as the Social Security Act. It actually is a revision of the Social Security Act. Social Security Act is a much larger law that's had many revisions over time, but so it technically is accurate, but I just didn't like the question generally. I also didn't like some of the answers. So the answer to the question was both A and B, but some of the answers were confusing. So I just want to talk about Stark a little bit. So what Stark is Stark is a law that was put in place to prohibit physicians from making referrals to entities with which they have a financial relationship. So, and it's not just a blanket prohibition. It's only for certain designated health services. But it was really put in place at a time when there were physicians abusing the system. So oftentimes we'll find that it's always, and this happens in all realms of life. It's always one jerk that messes it up for the rest of us. It happened to us when we were kids. It happens to us when you're an adult. There were physicians out there that were opening up clinical laboratories simply for the purpose of making money, for referring people to themselves that own the clinical laboratory or had a financial interest in it, and referring labs there that were not necessarily medically necessary. So that's what was happening, and Pete Stark, who was, I believe, in the House of Representatives, really spearheaded this effort to create this law, what was the original Stark Law, Stark One, to move this effort forward. So it's not a blanket prohibition on referrals from one entity to another, but there's definitely some restrictions, and generally, the best course of action is to allow patients to make the decision on where they want to go. Physicians can always make recommendations because oftentimes a patient won't know where they want to go or won't know what's best. So if they're looking for recommendations, it's not a wrong thing. But those recommendations should always be made based on this is a good physician to see, or this is a place that does great labs, or does great films. It should never be based on it's going to jack up our revenue. And it's interesting in this marketplace, and I'm in the office today in Pittsburgh. In this marketplace, I've actually heard people say that work in healthcare entities here. We refer internally to increase revenue, and that is not what you want to hear people say. Those words could be construed as various different types of violations. There's another element to Stark, physician self-referral statute, which I'll talk about here in a second. But so our answer to this question was actually it was the last answer, both A and B. Was our answer to that question. Second question, I did give everyone credit for that question as well. Second question, the Affordable Care Act provides for the establishment of voluntary self-disclosure protocol under which providers of services and suppliers may self-disclose actual or potential violations of the physician self-referral statute under Medicare. So this question, the answer was true, and so the ACA put in place this voluntary self-disclosure protocol for the physician self-referral statute. So we talked about Stark 1. physician self-referral statute is actually known as Stark 2. So it's kind of a second step, a second piece to Stark. Similar in nature, but kind of went a little bit further to deal with some other issues that stemmed with regard to these same types of problems, physicians referring for different types of services, and think of the the gamut of services physicians refer to, um, and how all of that needs to be governed in different ways, what types of there are actually what are called safe harbors in there, because physicians do need to be able to refer, and sometimes they do invest or they are employed by agencies. But so there need to be safe harbors, but there also need to be rules in place when there are situations where there are abuses going on. So it all needs to be balanced. Under the ACA, a voluntary self-disclosure protocol was put in place where there was the opportunity for people to come forward and say, "Oh, we messed up. We have been violating this, and we want to take care of it." And originally there was a 4-year look back on claims where they would go back and kind of take back your money for those claims. And now it's actually, I think, starting in sometime in 2017, it actually is a 6-year look back. So they'll go back 6 years and take money back. 6 years for those types of issues. So definitely a big deal. Self-referral statute's nothing to mess around with. So that's self-referral. And then the last question I want to talk about was the question itself was the False Claims Act, and it talked about where is my answer? Of course, I don't have the answer here in front of me, but it talked about. It protects the government from being overcharged or sold substandard goods or services. So really what the False Claims Act is, whenever you see kind of your standard fraud and abuse case where a provider has upcoded, which means that they've provided a certain level of service, but they've coded for a higher level of service, or they did a small surgery, but they coded for a larger surgery, something like that. So it's upcoding. Or let's say that they did some type of a service and didn't document for it, so they didn't put any medical record documentation in place, but they coded for it. They did the medical record or the medical coding, submitted a claim for it. If there's no documentation, it didn't happen. That's the government's rule. So no documentation, didn't happen, you can't submit a claim. So those are false claims. And then the most true form of fraud, didn't even do a service, submitted a claim. That's obviously fraud as well. So those are all what are called false claims. It could be something as simple as upcoding, which is fraud, or it could be something as significant as just manufacturing false claims in order to defraud the government. All considered false claims. And ultimately what it is this False Claims Act is protecting the government from these submissions of these false claims. Now, the application of the False Claims Act is much more broad than healthcare. It is, it goes across all, it's anyone that would be submitting a bill for goods and services that is substandard in some way. But obviously we use it in the healthcare industry with regard to actual medical claims for, a claim, an insurance claim. But it could be for any types of goods and services across all industries. So that is the False Claims Act question. Any other questions on any of the material for last week, please let me know. For this coming week, obviously in week 7, this is our last full week of class. Next week, week 8, ends on Friday, so please keep that in mind. I'd mentioned that in the announcement as well. I'll be going out of town on Saturday of this week. So Saturday of week 7, I'll be going out of town. I'll be out of town until next Thursday, but I'm still working. I'll still be on email, available to you guys in any way. I'll be on every day, but I might be a little delayed in my response. So bear with me. I'll be on in the morning. I'll be on at night. I'll probably check my phone during the day as well. But I might be just a little bit delayed in my response. So any questions, again, let me know. And everyone have a great week. Thanks.